Welcome back, everyone. My name's McKenna, for those of you who don't know me, and I tell the stories of those who can't tell it themselves. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you enjoy true crime, you like missing persons cases, you want to follow my life, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel because I make new videos every week. If you're an OG, I brought back the OG blanket. What? I hate myself. Today we're going to be talking about the incredibly frustrating case of Jonbenet Ramsey. If you're not familiar, this is a super high profile case that, quite frankly, is so frustrating because there's just so much information available and yet nobody has ever been tried in this case. If you are super interested in this case, I really encourage you to go out, do your own investigation, do a little Google search, because I can't possibly cover every single detail in this case. I would be on here for hours and hours and hours, but I did my best to pull as much information as possible, the pertinent stuff, the stuff you need to know to get a gist of the case and make your own conclusions. So with all of that being said, again, I will list all of the resources that I use down below, but I really encourage you to do your own investigation if you are interested in the case. I will be working on a vision board while we're doing this, and let's just jump in. Let's have a little chit chat. A little chit chat. On Christmas night 1996, Patsy and John Ramsey return home with their family from a dinner party of sorts. This included, again, John and Patsy, and also their children, Jonbenet and Burke Ramsey. And they said on the way home, Jonbenet had fallen asleep in the car. So when they got home, what they did was basically what any parent would do, and that is to basically carry Jonbenet up to bed. They put her to sleep, said goodnight, tucked her in, and reportedly went right to bed afterwards as well. Patsy and John were an affluent couple who lived in Boulder, Colorado, and when I say they were wealthy, I mean that they were significantly wealthy. They had 2 private jets, so they were by no means hurting for money. By all accounts, the couple seemed happy. They had plenty of money to support their numerous hobbies, and that included the child pageant circuit, and we're going to get into that a little bit further along in the video. At 5:52 in the morning on December 26th, 1996, when Patsy woke up to prepare the family to go on vacation, she went downstairs to start the coffee, and instead of starting coffee, she ended up calling 911 in hysterics, and she claimed that she had found a ransom note on the back staircase of their 15-bedroom mansion detailing the kidnapping of their daughter, Jonbenet. If you're not familiar with this case, let me first tell you about who Jonbenet Ramsey was. She was a 6-year-old, beautiful little girl. She was quite popular and successful in the child pageant circuit. If you're not familiar with that, it's wildly controversial. I really disagree with it because they highly sexualize and put makeup and dress up young girls to look significantly older, and so I just don't think it's appropriate, but that's none of my business. I don't have children. It's not for me to decide. You can leave your comments about that down below. I truly would love to know what your thoughts are on it. Let's get back to the case. Patsy calls the police to report Jonbenet missing, and obviously the police respond to the scene, and I think the first police officer arrived at 6 o'clock in the morning. They did an initial search of the house, but they really didn't place a lot of emphasis on it because the ransom note basically solidified the idea that she had been kidnapped. So why would she be in the house, right? Okay, so you may be wondering, where's Burke, that Jonbenet's brother? He was 9 years old at the time of her disappearance. I think I'm gonna cut this out like this. Well, according to Burke, he was in his room. His mother came in hysterics, yelling, "Where's my baby? Where's my baby? Where's Jonbenet? She's been taken." And he stayed in the room when she ran out? Question mark? I don't know. That's weird to me. Then the police arrived. They did their initial search, and he recalls waking up again when the police came in and shined their flashlights on him, and then he again stayed in the room. I think that's really weird, but I don't have children. I don't know what's normal per se. Normal? I don't even know if that's like a relative word, but normal for like a shy child. But I think that's weird. Again, let me know your thoughts down below. So anyways, he stays in his room. All right. As officers begin to arrive, John and Patsy have Burke taken to a friend's house. Now that friend is the same place that they had that Christmas party the night before, if you recall. And I want to say right away that the police really mishandled this case because they allowed family and friends to come over to the home to comfort the family, which you would say, okay, that's like a noble thing. However, it ended up really contaminating the crime scene, so to speak. And again, we'll get into this later, but that was a big F up on the police department's, part. So at 9:30 in the morning, a now retired FBI agent, Ron Walker, arrives to the home. He sends police officers over to the police station to help set up camp, and he also sets up a phone tap on the family landline, so that way if anybody called, it was a ransom situation, so they could trace the caller if anybody called the landline. Now, he also took a look at the ransom note, and right away, Ron Walker says he knew that it was a setup, that it was like made up and staged, and so he calls over to the officers on scene and he says, you make sure that you are watching the family because I'm suspicious of everything that's going on. Put eyes on each family member. I want to know what's going on at all times. And at that time, the police officer on scene was like, oh shit, John has been missing for 90 minutes. We have no clue where he is. Now, to this day, we don't know where John was during those 90 minutes. In fact, he claims that he was in his study. I think he says he was on the phone. But the police officers do claim that when he came back from wherever he was in those 90 minutes, and this could be subjective, but they claimed that he was more agitated and sort of like irritable, and his behavior had somewhat changed. So Special Agent Walker says to the officers on scene, keep John busy, take him with you, and do another search of the home, and tell him that you want to make sure that you didn't miss anything. But immediately after hearing this, John grabs his friend, Fleet White, which is the man who is part of the couple from the night before, that Christmas party. Ooh, excuse me, burping. And heads straight to the basement, opens the door to the storage area / wine cellar, and turns on the light and finds Jonbenet on the floor. Now, it's highly disputed as to whether the light was turned on before or after Jonbenet's body was located, which could really change how you interpret this scenario, because if the light was turned on prior to John finding Jonbenet's body, you would say, okay, whatever, he found the body, he turned the light on, he saw the body. But if the light had remained off and he ran down and says he found Jonbenet, how did he know her body was there? Because there was very little light in that storage area. You feel me? You picking up what I'm putting down? Jonbenet was found lying on the floor, covered with a white blanket. She was found dead, stiff from rigor mortis, with duct tape over her mouth and a garrote around her neck, and cord tying her wrists together. Quickly, if you're not familiar, a garrote is basically a rope or cord fashioned with a stick or rod, utilized for tightening the rope as a means of strangulation. It makes strangulation not only very painful, but extremely effective. This specific garrote was determined to have been fashioned from cord and the broken handle of one of Patsy's paintbrushes from her art kit. John picks up Jonbenet, rips the tape off of her mouth, unwinds the cord from around her neck, carries her upstairs, lays her on the carpet, and at some point, I'm not sure why, her body is moved again out into the living room next to the Christmas tree. And at this point, I'm sure you can imagine, the crime scene is completely compromised, entirely contaminated. Any chance of unearthing any physical evidence at this point by detectives is nearly impossible because the entire crime scene has been contaminated. So here's where it's probably best to go over the physical evidence that was recovered at the home. Let's start with Jonbenet's body. Jonbenet had abrasions to the side of her face between her ear and her jaw. She suffered from a significant blow to the head. Now, while this caused a significant skull fracture, it was not the official cause of death. Coroners determined that Jonbenet had died from strangulation, which we have obviously already previously discussed. Stranger, they determined that this strangulation occurred 45 minutes to 2 hours after she sustained the blow to the head. This was determined by the amount of brain swelling present. Her autopsy also revealed undigested pineapple in her stomach, which is weird because, remember back, they said that she had gone to bed right when she got home. They carried her up to bed, right? They put her in bed, they tucked her in, they said goodnight. They didn't say that she had sat down and had pineapple. Weird, right? I have read conflicting reports about DNA and blood found in Jonbenet's underwear. Now, some sources claim that the coroner determined that she had been sexually assaulted the night of her death. Some posit that there was evidence that she had been repeatedly sexually abused in the months or years prior to her death. But the autopsy revealed Jonbenet's underwear contained her urine, a small amount of her blood, and trace DNA from an unknown male, and this did not match anybody in the Ramsey family. The DNA also did not match anybody in the criminal or FBI database. Now, further DNA testing conducted in recent years argued that the trace DNA that was found in Jonbenet's underwear could have been leftover DNA that had been left during manufacturing and packaging, because it was basically touch DNA. This wasn't like seminal fluid or anything like that. This could have been touch DNA from just somebody touching the underwear and packaging it. And I don't think there was ever any note as to whether or not the underwear had been washed prior to her using it or wearing it. I don't know. That was never discussed, but I'm just throwing it out there that that is a possibility. DNA was also reported to have been found underneath Jonbenet's fingernails, again linked to an unidentified male. It is unclear to me if this DNA did or did not match the DNA in her underwear. I wasn't able to find a resource that sort of talked about that, so comment down below if you've read that or if you've heard about that before. Now we'll jump quickly into the basement itself. The window in I believe the rear of the basement was found broken. John claims that he actually broke this window himself when he locked himself out of the house months prior to this whole incident. There was also a blue suitcase located underneath the broken window, which the family didn't remember having been there prior. All of this would imply that somebody may have broken into the home, but the ironic part is that the intruder would not have had to break into the home at all because a bunch of the doors and windows were actually left unlocked and the security system or the alarm system was never set that night. So they very well could have walked in the door if this was actually an intruder. So let's deep dive into this ransom note really quick. The note claims to have been written by a foreign faction that hates the United States. It states that their daughter was safe and unharmed. This is super cool. I don't have a reason to use it, but it's super cool. It states that their daughter was safe and unharmed, but it requests $118,000, which is strange and very specific because this is nearly the exact amount that John was recently awarded as a yearly bonus, but the Ramseys were worth millions of dollars. It was signed SBTC Victory, which still remains a mystery to this day. Nobody knows who that is or what that group is. The letter gives explicit instructions to not call the police, and if they do, Jonbenet will be executed. The most suspicious fact about this note is that it was written on a notepad found inside the Ramsey home. Even stranger, a first draft of the note containing typos and misspellings was also found in the home, I believe, like in the wastebasket next to the desk. I could be making that up, but I just know that like a first draft of the letter was found in the home. Experts studied the language and verbiage of the note and basically put together a profile of the person they believe who wrote the note. They determined that the individual who authored the letter was likely female, primarily spoke English, and was at least 30 years of age or older. In the year 2000, a handwriting expert studied the ransom note for weeks on end, comparing the note to Patsy Ramsey's handwriting, and determined that it was highly probable that the note had indeed been written by Patsy. Now, moving along to the other physical evidence, 2 unidentified footprints were recovered outside of the residence. However, there were no footprints recovered directly outside of the window or in the snow surrounding the house, so that's really bizarre. As I said before, the case was mishandled from the word go. Once the case turned into a homicide investigation and not... Once the case turned into a homicide investigation and not a kidnapping, the power reverted back to the Boulder Police Department, but the FBI actually did offer to help, and unfortunately, the Boulder police declined their offer. Now, later the following day, the police did reach out and accept the help from the FBI, but sadly at this point, I mean, honestly, the crime scene was completely contaminated, and you know, the first 24 hours obviously are the most important in a homicide investigation, and during that time the case had been incredibly mishandled, so I don't know, they're kind of behind the 8 ball, so to speak. Is that a thing? That's a word. That's a phrase, right? That's a phrase. As we already said, the crime scene had already been extensively compromised. John and Patsy were not separated, nor were they extensively interviewed, and Burke was not questioned. Well, he was asked a couple questions, but he was basically never pressed on information that he may or may have not known. I think it's like inappropriate to offer theories that are strictly speculative. Now, there are 3 major theories that the public and the police have posited, so I'm going to gravitate towards those, and I'm going to cover those for now. Most notably, we can posit that an intruder could have entered the home, taken Jonbenet in the basement, murdered her, wrote the ransom note before or after killing her, and then left the scene. Now, of course, many have argued that somebody obsessed with Jonbenet within the pageant circuit could have committed this crime. Many individuals were suspected and ruled out. The DNA found on the body was tested against criminal databases, and there were no matches. I'm left with many questions in this situation. Why write the ransom note at all? Why waste those precious minutes of getaway time by writing a cryptic message requesting a relatively small amount of money to begin with compared to their overall worth when you stand no chance of actually gaining any financial leverage? While the home was open and offered access to an outside intruder, I'm not sure that enough pieces fall into place to actually support this theory. Individuals considered in this theory were Bill McRonald, Michael Halgorth, Gary Oliva, and John Mark Kerr for numerous reasons. And some of these individuals have confessed to actually murdering Jonbenet. However, all of their DNA has been eliminated and ruled out. So as suspects, they really don't make sense. All of them had alibis during that time. So I don't know what it says about you that you're confessing to a crime that you actually didn't commit, especially one this heinous, but whatever. That's not what this is about. Let's move on. The next theory that is widely believed by the public is that Jonbenet's brother Burke killed her accidentally or otherwise, and that their parents covered this up by attempting to stage the scene as a kidnapping. So let's break this down piece by piece. I like these boots. I'm going to cut this boot out. In 2016, Burke sat down for an interview with Dr. Phil. Now, I totally encourage you to go watch this interview. It's linked down below because his behavior is totally erratic, bizarre. His affect and his body language doesn't match the subject matter that he's discussing. He laughs a lot. I'm not sure. I mean, the guy is obviously, he's been questioned a lot in his lifetime. He's obviously nervous. I'm sure that this is not the subject he wants to be talking about. I'm sure he does not like being questioned as a suspect. So I don't know how to read that. I would love your take on it. Please, if you haven't seen it before, go watch it. Let me know your thoughts. It's really weird. In many ways, he actually distances himself from the entire event, including Jonbenet's funeral, but none of this marks him as a killer, quite frankly. I mean, his parents did shelter him a lot from the public because he was being accused so frequently of having hurt his sister or killing her, and so I really don't know how to read that. I do think he's really, really bizarre, though. Dr. Phil reveals a video of Burke, to himself, obviously, with a child psychologist right after the murder. He was asked, as a child, to draw a picture of himself and his family. He drew himself, he drew his mom and his dad, and he claimed that he had moved on, and that's why he didn't include Jonbenet in the picture. Now, this theory, again, about Jonbenet and Burke having been her killer, is based on evidence found in Jonbenet's gut. So there was a bowl of pineapple and milk found on the kitchen table in the Ramsey household the early morning of the investigation. Now, if you don't remember, the autopsy revealed undigested pineapple in Jonbenet's gut. The bowl itself contained Patsy and Burke's fingerprints, while a glass of tea located next to the bowl contained Burke's fingerprints alone. The theory goes that Burke became upset with Jonbenet for one reason or another. Maybe she ran by and grabbed a piece of pineapple out of the bowl, and that's why her fingerprints weren't on the bowl itself, because after all, the pineapple, or rather pineapple and milk, was Jonbenet's favorite snack, so her mother says. So the theory kind of goes that she stole some of Burke's pineapple and he got upset with her, hit her over the head with maybe the flashlight that was found there in the home, and the family got upset. They were worried that he had killed her, and so in order to stage the crime scene like an intruder was there, they ended up strangling her, putting her in the basement, writing the ransom note, and then calling the police. This whole theory is kind of based on the idea that the family, or the mom and dad, wanted to protect Burke because if he had in fact killed her, they still wanted to keep one child. They were going to protect the one kid that they had left because they, after all, had just lost their daughter. So that's what the theory is based on. Now, the final theory is that Patsy Ramsey murdered her daughter in a fit of rage. Essentially, the theory goes that Patsy became upset with Jonbenet after she had accidentally wet the bed. This would account for the urine in her underwear, and according to her brother Burke, she had quite frequently wet the bed, and it really did upset his mother. Now, Burke says, as an adult, that his mother never became violent or never had outbursts, but that's what this theory is kind of based on. Again, the theory goes that Jonbenet had wet the bed. The mom, Patsy, takes Jonbenet into the bathroom, and in a fit of rage, she throws Jonbenet down. She hits her head off of a hard surface, maybe the bathtub or the toilet, and in thinking that she had accidentally murdered her daughter, she fashions the garrote, she wrote the ransom note, she staged the scene, and she calls 911. Now, it is important to note a few things. First, the dispatcher who received the 911 call that evening states that towards the end of the phone call, Patsy believed that she had actually hung up. And in fact, she had not. The dispatcher stated that she heard 3 voices at the end of the phone call, and that Patsy's tone of voice had completely changed. Her demeanor had changed, and her speed shifted significantly, as though the 911 call was all an act. I will link the 911 call down below, again, in the description box, because I think it's really important to listen to. And quite frankly, I'm not that professional of a YouTuber that I know how to put it into the video. So just bear with me. Click the link. You know, do, look it up yourself. Don't be lazy. Again, at the end of the 911 call, the dispatcher believes that she hears 3 voices. So the first voice she hears is what sounds like John saying, "We aren't talking to you." And then it sounds like a young boy, like Burke, says, "What did you find?" And Patsy appears to then say, "What have you done?" Additionally, Patsy's handwriting analysis revealed an inconclusive result. Is that a thing? An inconclusive result? Her handwriting analysis was inconclusive. Follow me on this journey. So basically, they can't confirm or deny that she is or is not the person who wrote the ransom note. The Ramseys were not at all that helpful in the investigation. Ooh, cute. Cute. I'm trying to save money. Savings. They were actually not even questioned until 5 months after this whole incident took place. And so that's really weird. They also placed a bunch of stipulations on their interrogation. The most important one to consider is their request for the transcripts of their interrogation on the night of her murder. So basically, they would not agree to sit down with police unless they would give them the transcripts from the night of the original interrogation. And so one would then ask, are you trying to get your story straight? You want to make sure that you said the same, same thing, that you stick to the same story. Yeah, it's weird. And what's even weirder is that they actually agreed to give that to them. So again, poorly handled case. In 1998, a grand jury voted to indict Jonbenet's parents, but the DA actually elected not to proceed with charging them due to insufficient evidence. So basically, the indictment specifically alleged that they were guilty of neglect. It did not necessarily say they were guilty of murder, but it said they were guilty of neglect. And further counts pointed the finger at the Ramseys as to knowing who committed the murder, but having covered it up. Patsy died of ovarian cancer in 2006, and eventually in 2008, the parents were exonerated by the Boulder DA. I do my very best to kind of keep these cases concise and not too confusing. I did this one a little differently. I wasn't looking at the camera, try to take some pressure off of myself, because guys, it's very, very stressful looking in the camera at yourself. But I would love to know your thoughts. Do you believe that Burke accidentally murdered his sister and that the family covered it up? Or do you believe that an intruder came in the home, killed Jonbenet, wrote the ransom note, not intending to get any money, and then left her body? Or do you believe that Patsy killed her daughter in a fit of rage and kind of forged the whole scenario herself and made it look like an intruder? I really don't know what to believe. I lean more towards the theory of the brother, but I'm not saying he did it. I'm not saying he did it. I'm just saying it kind of makes sense to me. It's kind of bizarre that he quote unquote didn't come out of his room. He wasn't present for anything. They kind of sheltered him away from the entire case. I don't know. That's weird, right? Yeah, that's weird. Let me know your thoughts down below. Eventually, I will post this vision board because I'm new age. With that, I bid you adieu, and I will see you next week. Love you. Bye, guys.